welcome Ashley Balicki with Solutions-Based Family Law. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad to have this time to spend with you because so often when people are looking into divorce, they're wondering if they should get an attorney and they feel comfortable. They think that, I really need an attorney. And the drawback sometimes is that they're afraid it's going to get really costly or very contentious because it can be such an oppositional process. But after talking with you and learning more about how you do things, I would love for the people who watch these videos learn a little bit more about how you approach your law practice, your divorce practice, because you do a little more of a cooperative and collaborative type that I think people should know about. So maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. I generally think that when it comes to divorce and family law matters, that it's most important for my clients to have control over what's going to happen for the rest of their lives, over their stuff, their assets, their kiddos. And so in doing that, I like to really start a case by trying to come to agreements. I think that that's always best for all parties if it's able to happen. And in doing that, I don't know everything. I'm an attorney. I can provide the legal advice, but we often need to pull in other professionals to help us come to agreements in places that are in the family's best interest. So whether that is financial advisors, mortgage experts, accountants, child therapists, child experts, whatever the case kind of needs. I like to pull in experts in those arenas to help us come to agreements that are going to be in the family's best interest.
And when you do that, are you talking about having a formal report done, which can be a lengthy process and a little on the expensive side, or are you just having them come in casually to speak to all involved?
Generally, and certainly at the beginning, I like them to come in casually. I also like it to be joint experts so that it's not just one-sided and it's not just my client who has this team of individuals, but that we're agreeing with the other side and the other party to bring in these individuals who's able to provide their expertise to both parties so that it's not kind of an adversary type of situation, or we're not preparing for litigation. Usually when you have reports done and stuff like that, you're preparing for litigation. You're preparing to have a report done that says something in your favor that is not in the other side's favor. And so that's not, although that's often needed in some cases that do end up in litigation, it's not how I like to start the case. I like to bring in these professionals to just informally consult and to be able to pick up the phone and call them if we're working on a parenting plan and we're wondering, what type of schedule for a very young child is going to be appropriate. Or if we are dividing assets and we're trying to figure out the tax consequences of them, that we can just call these individuals and consult with them, and that it's all out in the open and both sides are hearing the same thing.
Wow. I mean, and how does that differ with the traditional legal process, something that you're familiar with, but you're kind of trying to steer away from? How does that differ? Because some people don't even realize what actually goes on.
Yeah, I think that differs from the traditional legal process in that when you're preparing for litigation, each side doesn't know what the other side's doing. And it comes up as basically a surprise right before you're going to a hearing that, hey, we have these experts and here's their reports. This is what they say. This is what they say is in the children's best interest. And they say that it's in the children's best interest to be with dad and not with mom, or things that are just so adversarial that isn't trying to necessarily help the situation, but the only purpose is to help one side win. And these experts are only working for one side. And so usually if you're talking to someone, if you're talking to an expert and they don't say what you want to hear or what you want the court to hear, then you're not going to use that expert and no one else is going to hear from them. And so the purpose is just to get these experts to say what you want them to say for a judge, because you want to succeed in court, instead of really working out with both sides. Okay, this is what dad thinks is best. This is what mom thinks is best. How do we meet in the middle? And what does an expert have to say about it?
Wow, that does sound a little different. So now when you get the group together, is it seriously like all four, both attorneys and both mom and dad are there in the room together? Is that how you do the meetings?
That would be more of the formal collaborative process, which is certainly a way to do that. So that is one way to do it, and sometimes that's the most effective way to get everyone in the same room, same place at the same time. I'd say, although I do that for some of my cases, it's generally more just one-offs. And so it might just be, okay, we're going to have a conversation with the financial expert in doing the financial disclosures, and everyone's going to hop on the phone or hop on a Zoom call and just talk about these financial disclosures. Or if we're in the process of reaching a separation agreement, maybe we pull in the financial expert because we have a few questions, and we say, hey, we're going to be doing this between the hours of whatever hours in a day. Are you available if we need to call you and ask you any questions, both attorneys or both parties or everyone, to ask those types of questions?
Okay, well that is different too, because it is so much back and forth, and there's, not a lot of collaboration, I would say, in the traditional sense, with the attorney process. So tell me also, though, how do you get other attorneys to get on board? Do you have someone hire you, and then other attorneys that might approach it the same way as you, or how do you kind of ensure that you're going to have that kind of cooperation?
Well, that's part of the process that I don't often have control of. And so if my client comes to meet with me first and they want to do this type of approach, like I said, this is always how I start a case. I will give them recommendations for attorneys. I will refer them to the Colorado Collaborative Divorce Professionals website. And on there, it has all of the attorneys who have been collaboratively trained in Colorado. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do a formal collaborative case, but you know that these individuals have the training and the mindset to be able to do these types of cases, and can use these types of skills and these experts in a non-formally collaborative way. So that is ideally how it works. Oftentimes, if there's an attorney that I don't know if they're collaboratively trained, I just ask them, like, hey, I think these parties are really trying to work things out. What do you say? I'm thinking I have this financial expert. Do you think we can hop on a call and you can see if you're comfortable talking to them, and kind of just broach things that way, instead of saying, this is what we're going to do through the entire case. And then oftentimes the next time I have a case with them, they are familiar with that type of practice, or they start to implement that in their own practice.
Wow, I bet that's awesome. That just seems like it would be so much better for everybody and less
Yeah.
stressful.
Yeah.
So when you say formal collaborative, can you just tell us a little bit about what that means? A lot of people aren't really familiar with that. We love the word collaborative, we love the word cooperative, but we're not really sure maybe what formal collaboration means.
Sure. So in Colorado, we have what we call a collaborative law, and you can do a divorce in through the collaborative process. And that means that both parties have to have collaboratively trained attorneys. And at the beginning of the case, you all have to sign an agreement that you're going to do this collaboratively, meaning outside of the courtroom, and that should this case end up in court, then both attorneys will have to withdraw. And so there's pretty substantial consequences if the collaborative process fails. And so that's kind of a way to ensure that the case will not end up in court. And then the process itself, you usually have what's called a facilitator, and you have pretty stringent schedules. So you'll have monthly meetings, and there'll be topics and an agenda for each of those meetings. Like, today we're going to discuss a parenting time schedule. Today we're going to discuss division of retirement assets. And you have these monthly meetings reaching partial agreements, and then at the end of the case, the goal is that you have a full agreement. Sometimes these meetings are just for parties to vent and talk about issues that a court wouldn't really find relevant, but it's certainly relevant to these families and these parties, and to work out those types of issues. And you also bring in professionals depending on the issues of the case. You'll also have a financial expert. Oftentimes you'll have a child expert. Depending on the case, you'll have other types of experts that often get brought in, but those are probably the two most common. And you just have a very specific agenda and schedule that you follow until you come to an agreement.
Right. So it sounds similar to what you're doing, but a little, like you say, formal with all the meetings rather than I'm going to do a one-off here. We're going to do a quick phone call. We're going to gather some information and see if we can do joint experts.
Mhm.
Sounds like, yeah, you've kind of taken the best of both worlds, maybe make it a little bit faster and a little bit more efficient, I say, than trying to schedule and have that formal process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that sounds great. Do you think there's anything else you'd like to tell our viewers about the process or how you do things that they might be interested in?
Yeah, I think the last part that I would like to point out that most people don't know about is that you can go through the divorce process and end up in mediation or arbitration, which is another tool that I often use in the non-formally collaborative cases where you're agreeing to stay out of court, but maybe you have issues that you just can't resolve, that you just can't come to agreements on, and so you agree to go to an arbitration with an agreed upon arbitrator who's going to make those decisions for you in a more informal setting, kind of hearing from both sides, hearing the evidence without having to go through the litigation process, which I also think is a wonderful tool that many parties don't know about.
Yeah, that's right. I remember now that you were telling me about the arbitration, and I haven't heard that much about it, but it does sound like a great alternative. It's not as stressful. And you say, on the tell me a little bit about in arbitration, though, it is a ruling that you agree to, right? That you agree whatever the arbitrator says is what is going to happen, right? They make the
Yep.
final decision.
Yep, just like a judge. It has the same binding effect as a judge.
That's interesting. Well, that's so good to see that. I think like what we do is the non-attorney mediation, but I think that so many people want to have attorneys there, that this is a great way to kind of morph both ways, to make it less stressful, maybe less expensive, less contentious, but still have your attorney right there if you're feeling like you really want that and need that. And then the alternative with the arbitrator, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, hey, thank you for joining us today. Tell us how our viewers could get a hold of you if they wanted more information from you.
Sure. So our firm's name is Solutions Based Family Law. Our website is solutionsbasedfamilylaw.com. Our phone number is 720-420-3610. And we have how many attorneys do we have now? 6 attorneys who you can consult with here. We're all very similar mindsets, and we'd be happy to chat with you.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us today.
Thank you.